2024 California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Wendy Strack, Vice Chair of the Board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences is holding this meeting in person and via the WebEx platform. We will announce when we're accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room, and then we will proceed to WebEx participants so that remote audience members can also comment. At that time, they'll have 2 minutes to comment. As a note for today's agenda, we'll be moving agenda items 2 and 3 to the end of the meeting after we reconvene in open session. That means suggestions for future agenda items and public comment for items not on the agenda will be moved to the end of the day. Members, we're going to proceed to call to order and establish quorum. Members, please, during the roll call, introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. And Christina, please call the roll.
Good morning. Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Good morning, Nick Boyd, LPCC President.
Abigail Ortega,
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft,
Present MFT member, he, him.
Susan Friedman,
Present public member.
Wendy Strack,
Present public member.
Kelly Ranasinghe,
Present, public member, he, him.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Present public board member, she, hers.
Eleanor Uribe,
LCSW member.
Lourdes Bailey,
Present public member.
and for the record, Christopher Jones and John Sovek are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will be looking to take a lunch break as close to 11:30 as possible, depending on where we are with the hearings at that time. And with that, we can begin our petition hearings. Today, the proceedings will be conducted by Judge Patrice Huber. And good morning, Judge. The meeting is now yours.
Good morning, and thank you, Vice Chair. We are on the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Jennifer Marian Williams. The agency case number is 2002020001519, and the OAH case number is 20241000506. Today is November 14th, 2024. The time is 9:31 a.m. This is the date and time set for the hearing in this matter, and we are appearing in person and by WebEx. My name is Patrice Huber. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this matter with the quorum of the board who is here. And I'll take the appearances of the parties, but let me just first check in the audience. Is Ms. Williams present? Ms. Williams, would you please take a seat? All right, and let's make sure your microphone is working.
Hello.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, I'll take the appearances of the parties, starting with Ms. Lazark.
Good morning, Adriana Lazark, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522, and I'm here to assist the panel with fact-finding.
Thank you, Ms. Lazark. And Ms. Williams, will you please introduce yourself at this time?
My name is Jennifer Williams, licensed marriage and family therapist.
Thank you. Good morning. So Ms. Williams, just so you're aware, we have a court reporter with us this morning, Ms. Till, and her job is very important, and that is to help us create the record of what happens in your hearing today. So to help her out in creating that record for us, make sure you're speaking clearly, loudly, and slowly. You will get an opportunity to speak to the board. You may receive some questions, and so when you answer those, make sure you're speaking clearly. And make sure that only one speaker at a time is speaking. Let me just confirm, Ms. Williams, do you have an attorney for this matter?
I do not.
Okay, and you were aware that you could have retained an attorney at your own expense?
Yes.
And you've decided to proceed on your own, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Thank you. So let me tell you how the hearing will go, Ms. Williams. So this is your petition. So what that means is that you have the burden to show, to prove that you should be entitled to what you're seeking. So ordinarily, in a petition, the petitioner goes first because they have the burden. But in this case, I'm going to ask Ms. Lazark to go first, just to set the scene for us, give us the background and the context of what has happened with your license and what got us to this point where you're now seeking a petition. Does that make sense, Ms. Williams?
Totally. Yes.
Any questions so far?
None.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lazark for her presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like to go over the exhibit first?
However you'd like to proceed.
Let's do the exhibits, if that's okay with.
Go ahead.
I have provided the panel as well as the OH with a total of 5 pre-marked exhibits for identification. First in order is the first exhibit, which is the memo to the board written by the probation analyst. Second in order is the license history certification for Ms. Williams. It's 2 pages. Third is the board discipline, a total of 20 pages. Exhibit 4 is the petition for reinstatement and the supporting documents that were provided by the petitioner, totaling 57 pages. And last in order is what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 5. This is the notice of hearing indicating the date and time of today's hearing, total of 2 pages. And I ask that Exhibits 1 through 5 be admitted, Your Honor.
Thank you. And Ms. Williams, let me just check with you. Have you had an opportunity to look at those exhibits before today?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any objection to any of the exhibits?
No objections.
Thank you. So exhibits 1 through 5 are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And petitioner has provided what may be the 6th exhibit. These are some documents that she brought for the panel, Your Honor, and myself this morning. And so these are hard copies. So these should be admitted as the 6th exhibit.
Okay. And what are those? What is exhibit 6?
It appears to be a personal statement and some character letters. Ms. Williams can provide more detail.
And is it the hard copy that's on everybody's desk? Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Any objection to exhibit 6, Ms. Williams?
No objection.
Exhibit 6 is also admitted.
Thank you. By way of brief background, petitioner has been registered as an associate clinical social worker since October 24th, 2019. On December 8th, 2022, the registration was upgraded to a licensed clinical social worker. The registration is
One moment,
active.
Ms. Lazark. I'm seeing Ms. Williams shaking her head.
I'm a licensed MFT.
I'm sorry. Maybe I got that incorrect. Let me 1 second.
Just take your time.
Okay, on October 24th, 2019, the board issued an associate marriage and family therapist registration number. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The registration is active and will expire as of December 31st, 2026.
Licensed. I got licensed. I got licensed about 2 years ago, so 2022.
So the license will expire December 31st, 2026, unless it's renewed. Is that correct? On May 21st, 2021, the petitioner was convicted of a misdemeanor DUI. The circumstances.
Sorry to pause you. It was in December 2019.
Okay, I'm sorry. December 2019, the petitioner was convicted of a misdemeanor DUI. The circumstances were that she was at a holiday party and she had too much to drink after a period of sobriety. Her BAC was 0.33%. On September 8th, 2021, the board filed an accusation against the petitioner. The parties subsequently entered in a stipulation that became effective September 29th, 2022. Pursuant to the stipulation, the petitioner was placed on probation for a period of 4 years with standard terms and conditions. The projected end date for the probation is September 28th, 2026. Petitioner does not have a history of tolling or any prior petitions. Effective September 29th, 2023, the petitioner drug testing frequency requirement was reduced to 36 times per year. Effective October 23rd, 2023, therapy sessions were also reduced from weekly to monthly, and the petitioner has been compliant with all probationary terms.
Does that conclude your presentation,
Yes,
Mrs. Zark?
thank you.
All right. So Ms. Williams, turning it back over to you.
Mhm.
I'm going to swear you in so that the board and I can consider what you say as testimony. So please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. Please state and spell your full name for us.
Jennifer Williams, JenniferWilliams.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. So the board is in receipt of your petition, so we have all of the materials that you've submitted. So there's no need to repeat what's already in there, but if there's something that you would like to highlight or emphasize for the board today, this is the time to do that. And what the board is really interested in is, has there been any changes or your rehabilitation since the underlying discipline? So do you have any questions so far?
No questions.
All right, thank you. Whenever you're ready, please begin.
Okay, I just want to start off by thanking everybody for giving me the opportunity to be here. I understand that we're here because I got a DUI back in December 2019, and that is still to the day one of the biggest mistakes I have ever made in my entire life. It was completely careless and reckless, and many things could have done to prevent myself from doing that. I take full accountability and responsibility for the mistake that I made. I chose to get behind the wheel of a vehicle while under the influence, and I consider myself fortunate that it did not result in property damage, harm to somebody else, or harm to myself. But I am very, very aware that that could have easily been me. And so since that event, I've done everything in my power to change and become the person that I am today. I want to spend some time kind of talking about where I was before. It's a little bit of what was written in my personal statement, and talk about the person that I am today. And so prior to my DUI, I was no stranger to AA. I had realized that I had a problem with drinking back in 2018. I had gone through a traumatic, abusive situation, and I let that go unresolved and untreated for years. And so I ended up turning to alcohol to deal with that. And by 2018, I started to realize that it was a problem. My mom, who is here with me, is a drug and alcohol counselor, and she has always pushed 12-step recovery. I'm not the first alcoholic in my family. We come from a line of it, and so my mom always attended Al-Anon. She's not one of me, but when I started to show up with my problematic drinking, she encouraged me to go to 12 steps. And so I did, and I found so much healing there. But there's a thing in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that says the obsession of the alcoholic mind is to one day figure out a way to practice controlled drinking. And that was what I thought I could do. I was pretty functional in my regular life. I was pretty normal, what people would see. So I thought that maybe I could somehow figure out a way to control my drinking. So I would attend AA, get sober for some time, and then always end up going back to my drinking. And so this happened for a while. I was in a moment of one of my sobrieties when I had the next really tragic thing happen to me. My best friend since kindergarten, she was killed by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend ran her over with his truck 3 times, and she she died, and that was really hard for me. I was an only child. I am an only child. She was an only child, and we were each other's sisters. And so going through that loss was really brutal for me. I stayed sober for about 30, 40 days after that through her funeral, but unfortunately after that, I couldn't. And that just started this pattern back into going to meetings, getting sober, relapsing. And that's where we found me on that night in December in 2019 for my DUI. I had been sober, but I made the poor decision to go to a party I should have not had, but I did, and I drank. But we're here because I want to talk about my rehabilitation, and everything that I want to say moving forward is not to take away and or minimize, because as I said, I take full accountability for the mistake that I made, but I made sure to move forward and make changes to be a better person. And so after that, I started to attend my meetings regularly. My home group is a 6 a.m. meeting, and that's what I started to go to 5 days a week. And I got a sponsor and I started to work the steps, but there was this one thing missing, which I realized was integral for my recovery, which was accountability. Like I told you, I loved AA, I loved recovery, but I kept living like my regular life and I wasn't integrating the two. And as a result, I did have one relapse July 4th, 2020, but I'm very grateful to say that my sobriety date is July 5th, 2020, and I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. And so what happened after that is there's a gentleman in my 6 a.m. meeting that said, the one thing that you need to change is everything. And that's what I realized that I needed to do. I realized that I needed to have just radical accountability. I realized that I needed to integrate all areas in my life. And so I got a new sponsor, and she is still my sponsor, and she is the greatest thing ever. She took me through the 12 steps of AA, and we spent a lot of time, particularly on steps 6 and 7, which deals with character defects. And why that was so important for me, because the character defects is the why to my drinking. I got rid of alcohol, which is great, but I'm still stuck with all of the feelings that pushed me to drink. So I needed an action plan to deal with those. So not only did we read the big book, the 12 step, but there are 2 other books in AA that focus on those steps 6 and 7. And it really gave me an answer to why I did the things that I did. I continued to stay very active at my 6 a.m. meeting. I took on commitments. Additionally, I was able to get through the steps. And so I was able to sponsor other women. And by sponsoring, I was able to get connected to a wonderful organization in Pasadena where they offer services to women experiencing homelessness who are pregnant or have kids. And so while I was sponsoring this gal, the director found out I was in recovery and asked, hey, would you like to come and run 12-step groups? And as we got talking, she found out about my credentials as well and said, would you want to come and teach classes? So I, from scratch, created an 8-week addiction curriculum course. I created an 8-week domestic violence curriculum course. I did an 8-week seeking safety. I didn't make up that curriculum. And I created an 8-week emotional regulation. And so for over a year, we would cycle through those 8-week classes, take a break, and do another one. I had since had to stop my work at that organization because infertility is it is a part of my story. And so my husband and I needed to focus on fertility treatment. And so I had to pause, but they know that I'm going to be back there as soon as I get all of this fertility stuff worked out. Additionally, professionally, and I have letters written in there, I started working at an organization called Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles. Okay. At an organization called Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles. And in my evidence, you will see letters written from people from that organization. This is also an organization where we do outreach services. So it looks very different from the like cozy, comfy couch therapy. This was meeting clients out in the street. So I was doing clinical work in encampments. I was doing it in my car. We were Ubering them to our office. We were just reducing whatever the barrier was to help these individuals receive services. I don't take any sort of account. I don't take any it's not because of me anybody is sober, but because I was able to work at that job, I was given one client specifically who really struggled with alcohol. And in my own clinical opinion, personal self-disclosure shouldn't happen unless it aligns with the client's treatment plan. And even if it aligns with the client's treatment plan, I think you need to wait a few sessions to see if it's really going to be clinically important, any sort of personal self-disclosure. This client specifically was struggling with alcohol. And during my work with them, I did disclose my own journey in recovery. And when I left that organization, this person had celebrated over 9 months of sobriety and had shared with me how much my sharing with them, like a clinical professional, meant so much to them and helped them in their own recovery journey. Additionally, at that job, like I had said, I needed to make the change of being accountable. And so when I started there, I wasn't on probation with the board yet or anything, but I knew that I needed to be accountable. So I told my boss, I told my supervisor, I told the CEO of the company, and I told everybody that I worked with that I was in recovery. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because one of the other women that was on my team was also 7 years in her own recovery. And so, like so many people say that they have like a work husband or a work wife, I had my regular sponsor in my regular life, and I had a work sponsor in my work life. So my whole life was recovery. And so I really had that opportunity to really learn new tools and learn how to integrate them into my life. Additionally, professionally, I did leave that practice because it's always been a dream of mine to start my own private practice. And specifically, I wanted to help teens because, as I had said, I did a lot of works on steps 6 and 7, and I realized how I have a lot of my own character defects, and a lot of those stemmed from when I was in my teenage years. And so I really wanted to build a practice that was focused on helping other people not end up following the same type of line that I did of choosing alcohol as a means to cope. So as many of you know, to become a licensed therapist and to start off on your own, you have to go through your associateship. And so every time I was with a new practice, I once again was radically accountable and told everybody about my journey in recovery and that this is who I am. When I started my own private practice, I had office suite mates, and I also told them about my journey in recovery and that I am a sober person, because I knew no matter what, I needed to stay accountable. And that's what I've done. Personally, you know, my sobriety and the changes that I've made have really made my personal life amazing. I got married early into my recovery to the most incredible man who's also here with me today too, who has just come alongside me in my life and has been like my alcohol bodyguard with me. He and I got married during the pandemic, and all of the people in my 6 a.m. meeting were there to attend our wedding virtually. And later on, when we got married in person, my sponsor was my flower girl, and all of my 6 a.m. women were there. And so I've totally integrated my personal and my recovery life, and it's changed me to who I am today. But when it comes to personal life, life gets hard, and I entered into one of the most challenging seasons of my life this summer of my entire sobriety. So right when my husband and I were in the middle of doing the really heavy injection part of my IVF treatment, our beloved cat got very sick and required a lot of intensive treatment. And unfortunately, we weren't able to save him. So during my egg retrieval time, we had to put down my cat. 2 weeks later, my father had a heart attack and he was in the hospital. And I couldn't see him at the start because he was sick and I was doing my IVF, and so we couldn't meet, but I'm an only child, my dad's everything, so I ended up going to see him. Thank goodness he's okay. He's here in Sacramento, but he's 80, so he wasn't gonna sit here the whole time, but he's here in spirit. Then a week after my dad being in the hospital, I developed a breast cyst, which turned into a breast abscess, which turned into a cancer scare. And I had to receive weekly surgical treatment for over a month to be able to get myself to be in the clear so I could continue my IVF treatment. And so life happened, and life happened hard for me this summer. And because of the changes that I was able to make and the recovery that I have and the rehabilitation that I've gone through, I was able to weather that storm and deal with the really big feelings and come out even stronger. I come to you today very grateful to say that 3 days ago, I got the news that I am 5 weeks and 1 day pregnant. And so my IVF was successful. And I am just so grateful to be here to even just do this and carry myself in a way that I just have confidence in myself now. I'm here today asking for this reduction to be terminated because I have dreams and goals that I want to accomplish. I mean, now it's this dream and goal to be a mom. I want to be a mom. I want to be the best that I can for this little child. Professionally, like I want to supervise, and I think therapists that have lived experiences make for some of the best therapists and can offer a lot of support and experience to fellow associates. So it's a dream that I have. Another smaller dream is I've always thought about getting a PhD specifically to do addiction treatment research. And I think how great it would look if I'm able to end this time. And most importantly, you know, I really want to be able to do this for myself. Like I have changed. I have changed so much. Additionally, another hard thing that I had to do was attend the hearing for the guy that killed my best friend. And that was really hard. And I included it in my evidence, my victim impact statement that I read in front of the entire courtroom, where I outlined how my recovery has helped me. And while I was driving home, I realized to my husband, you know what, I'm missing an opportunity to do a 12 step, which is where we carry that message to a fellow alcoholic who is still suffering. And so I went home and I wrote another letter that I had every intention to give to this man because I wanted him to know that there is help. The exact same help that I got, this person can have too, because as much as I'm connected to the experience that this man killed my best friend, like I said, I take accountability for what I did, and I know that I could have been that person too. And I'm no different than him. And so I deserve to get help, and so does this person too. So I'm just very grateful to be here. You know, I'm very grateful to my higher power who comes alongside me and helps me. My higher power was the biggest thing that helped me that summer when everything felt like it was going wrong and getting sick and me getting sick, that I was always able to have this faith that carried me through, this faith that I've got because I've been able to work a program of recovery and because I've gotten to experience the changed person that I am today. And so that is really everything that I have to say, and I'm ready for questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. So I will check for questions. We're going to go around the room, but I'm going to start with Ms. Lazarek. Do you have any questions for Ms. Williams?
I do, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Williams, just to clarify a couple things, make sure we have it right for the record. You were issued an AMFT license in October 24th, 2019, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that license was upgraded on December 8th, 2022 to an LMFT license, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And your conviction date for the DUI is in fact on May 21st, 2021.
Oh, maybe the conviction. You're right. I apologize. It happened in December. Yes.
The underlying circumstances that led to the DUI happened in December of 2019, correct?
Correct.
Now, you mentioned that your sobriety date was July 2020.
July 5th, 2020.
Why did you wait 8 months to become sober from the date of the incident?
I was sober. I just had a relapse on July 4th, 2020.
Now, you've mentioned that you've gone through the 12 steps of AA. How many times did you go through those steps?
I've gone through them once with my sponsor, but more times with the women that I sponsor.
How many women do you sponsor?
Right now, one.
Have you sponsored more than?
Yes, I've sponsored more. I think about 6, 7.
In your petition, for which we're here today, you mentioned that the root cause of your drinking, your therapy deepened your awareness regarding the root cause of your drinking. What would you say that root cause of your drinking was?
A lot of insecurities, a lot of low self-esteem, and a lot of not having the right tools to deal with big feelings, because a lot of me back then wanted to avoid big feelings, and alcohol was a great means to do that. And so I was able to develop more confidence in myself now and understand that feelings will get very big and eventually feelings will always come back down.
And how do you deal with those insecurities and those big feelings now?
Doing my program. It's given me confidence, having a relationship with my higher power. I get to spend about an hour, hour and a half every morning doing a morning meditation routine that has just gotten me plugged into this idea of a higher power. And this higher power has helped me develop a lot of self-confidence in myself.
Now, you attend consistent psychotherapy sessions, is that correct?
Yes, once a month.
And is that part of your probation terms?
Yes, but I also like therapy, so it works for me.
Do you attend any other type of psychotherapy that's not required of your probationary terms?
No.
You mentioned that you completed education courses pertaining to addiction. What have you learned from these courses?
I learned more about how addiction affects the body, more specifically alcohol and with women, and how women can be a lot more susceptible to less alcohol than men are.
And you've also developed a curriculum on addiction, is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that, the curriculum that you developed?
Yeah, so I kind of outlined to the beginning of talking about the different drugs and how they affect the different parts of your brain and the parts of your body. Then I also talked about different like social aspects of drinking. I also talked about recovery. I also brought in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and helped them get to that understanding of why it shows up in their own life.
And where do you teach this curriculum?
It's called Elizabeth House in Pasadena.
How long have you been part of this?
I started there in 2022, and I just paused earlier this year.
And how many people would you say attend your course?
About 7.
How often do you teach the course?
I was doing it every 8 weeks and then pause for a week and then continue for the next group for 8 weeks. And that was for about a year and a half.
Now, in your petition, you also mentioned that you used alcohol as a means of escaping reality. And I know that you touched on your best friend's passing and the insecurities that you were dealing with. Who do you turn to now if you, if any of those feelings or any of those triggers resurface?
Like, as I mentioned, and I know maybe sometimes it's hard because some people don't have the concept, but like my higher power is always there for me. So whenever those insecurities start to get triggered, I'm always able to plug into my higher power. I also have my sponsor, I have my husband, I have my mom, I have my dad, I have all the people that wrote me character letters are individuals that I can reach out to when I'm struggling.
And lastly, you mentioned in your petition that you've learned tools to sit with uncomfortable feelings. Can you talk about the tools that you now have?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm a visual person, so I'm able to understand that my feelings get really big. So they're going to have a high point and then they're also going to have a low point. So I'm able to just like the tool is sit with the feelings. And so I just sit there and I acknowledge the sensations where they're happening in my body, what I am feeling. And I'm able to remember that just like since I've gotten sober, I've experienced big feelings and know that they come down. I know that that feeling is going to come down eventually. I'm also able to reach out to people. I can schedule a session. The beautiful thing about having virtual meetings now is you can attend a meeting whenever you want, wherever you want. And so I'm able to do that as well.
Have you changed your circle of friends since?
100%.
Does your husband drink?
He's a normie, but because he's with me, he doesn't drink. And that just proves how much this sober lifestyle is a lifestyle to live because he enjoys being sober with me. So pretty much sober.
Now, you also are involved in MAD, is that correct?
I did it as a requirement of my DUI with the the legal system.
I don't have anything further.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lazark. I'm going to go around the board now, Ms. Williams. I'm going to start to my left. Dr. Boyd, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Ortega, any questions?
Hi. Thank you for your testimony.
Mhm.
My question is, you had mentioned like integrating your AA lifestyle with your daily life. Just wondering, what do you do for fun, to decompress? And then I had another question after that, but yeah.
I'm big on cooking, so I love to cook, and I'm big on traveling. I love to travel. It's the best way to disconnect completely. And it's been really fun finding like AA meetings in different countries, but I love to travel.
Wonderful. And then I had another question. I saw one of the courses you took and like the emphasis that you have on supporting the women, and I forgot the name of the place.
Elizabeth House.
Elizabeth House. There was one course on like pregnancy, right, and women and substance use. So any thing that you learned from the curriculum that you are considering as you're going through this path of becoming a mother?
Absolutely, because drugs affect our body just the same way that hormones affect our bodies. And so I have to think about the stress hormones that go through my body. And I want to be able to reduce that. I've completely reduced alcohol. I don't have a problem with drugs. And so I've been able to limit that. But to speak a little deeper on that question, what I actually had to do when I was working at Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles was come alongside women who continue to use while being pregnant and having to help educate them and give them the tools to recognize that they don't need to lean on that while pregnant. But it's very, very hard. And that's what a lot of that course talked about, that for some individuals, it's hard to give up that substance because it's what's helping them emotionally get through the day, even though they have this baby that they need to care for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Haupt?
Hi, thank you for being here. I have a couple of questions. How long were you sober in 2019 when you had this DUI?
For the date that I got it, probably 3 days.
And you seem to describe like a series of sobriety dates. Roughly how many relapses were there in December?
In December,
Mhm.
probably 2.
Okay. And you have a lot of character letters, a lot, I think maybe 20 or so. Only 2 of them seem to address explicitly ending probation early. And so I'm wondering, that's not a problem, but I'm wondering what prompt you gave people. So what did you tell people to write about?
Just about me and that I'm coming to this board and giving them my testimony. So just to
Okay.
write a character letter describing me and how they think
Okay,
that I
excellent.
am.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit more explicitly about your ongoing plan to stay sober? You've described tools, you've described a connection to a higher power, but I'm wondering if you certainly talk about coping skills quite a bit in your packet, but I'm wondering if maybe you can clearly identify what these coping skills, these strategies are.
Absolutely. I mean, most importantly is that I've built a life that I love, and that life is sober. And so the only way for me to live this life is for me to stay sober. I am very happy with the person that I am, and I'm very well aware that if I pick up a drink, I lose all of that. And there's no part of me that wants to lose the life that I'm living right now. And so that's kind of the tool that's just ingrained in me, that if I pick up a drink, I lose everything that I'm experiencing professionally, in my personal life, everything. And now I have this little size of a seed in me right now that I'm like, there's no part of me that genuinely wants to drink. There's no part of me that wants to lose the life that I'm living.
Excellent, thank you. Just two more quick questions. Can you talk about how your therapy practice is improved, better, compared to before December 2019?
Absolutely. I'm present. I don't have to ever worry about not going to work. Like I'm just 100% present. I'm 100% accountable. My clients know that they can always get in contact with me. I respond within 24 hours. I'm just a better therapist all around because I do not have any sort of those type of distractions bothering me.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And the last question, how would a reduction in your probation change your work?
I would be able to hire associates and help them and give them the tools. I know that I'm flawed. I'm here. I've made terrible mistakes. But at the same time, I do feel like, especially when it comes to addiction treatment and trauma, I have a lot to offer associates and would love to be able to provide them with that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman?
Hi, thanks so much for being here and sharing your story, and congratulations on being pregnant. I'm just wondering, and it may be the answer that you just gave, what is it about probation? Is there something specific about the probation that you find most egregious that you would like to get rid of?
Yeah, as mentioned, I definitely want to be able to be a supervisor. I think my role as a sponsor has helped prepare me for that. So I think I could be a supervisor. I'd really love to be able to do that. Additionally, I think there's a very huge financial piece to this that like takes a lot of resources. I was only able to successfully get one embryo, and being an only child, I don't want to have another only child, but it only takes one. So there's a lot of finances that go into potentially having a second child. So there's the finance, but more importantly, I really want to be an associate or a supervisor to associates.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Strack?
Thank you. Just thank you for being here. Congratulations on your pregnancy. Just thank you for being vulnerable and really open with your responses. I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Ranasinghe?
Thank you for coming, Ms. Williams. One of the letters doesn't have any date on it. It's the given guidance letter. Do you know when that was written?
That was for my supervisor at my last, before I got licensed, and that was last year around probably September.
Okay. You gave your victim impact statement on February 3rd, 2023. And after that, it seems that you remained sober. What do you attribute to that?
After the victim.
After the victim impact statement, and I'm sure that was a pretty traumatic event.
It was a lot. And why I stayed sober after, like after the incident that happened, or giving my victim impact.
Giving your victim impact statement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm because I was already sober, I was already loving the life that I lived, and being able to just show up and pay testimony to my friend and fight for her justice, like I had to be there, and I can only continue to fight for her justice if I stay sober. And so I'm never going to go back to drinking.
Okay. Nothing further.
Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Williams, for your testimony today. I really appreciate you being here. Just a couple of questions. You mentioned that, I believe it was, please clarify for me, it was either a therapist or someone in AA that said to you that you need to change everything. Clarify, was that?
Yeah, it was a gentleman in my 6 a.m. meeting who always says to the newcomers, the one thing that you need to change is everything.
Okay, and what time period was that? What was the date of that?
When he said that,
Yeah.
when I started going to those 6 a.m. meetings, so that was like sometime in after the DUI, so January
Of what year?
2020.
Okay, that's what I thought. I'm listening to you and I am appreciating your thread of accountability. And it seems like, would you say that was an aha moment for you to hear that?
Yeah, definitely. Like it really started to click for me, even though I had that relapse. And even more so when that relapse happened was the aha of like, let me see where I am still in my life, not changing everything.
Yeah, and I hear that, and I see you, and I thought it was profound when you mentioned that is when you started to integrate your personal and professional life by sharing out loud to other folks that you were in recovery, and that is your point of accountability and integrating your whole life together. And what I'm reaching towards is that your sobriety date is July 5th of 2020. So shortly after having that aha moment, what I hear you saying was really what brought about the change in the, how would I say, your being able to stay sober. So I appreciate, again, your testimony and how you showed and demonstrated how life, there's lifing in life. So congratulations on your pregnancy. And just as a sidebar, I think you would be a strong doctoral candidate or applicant, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Uribe?
Okay, I wanted to go back to the last time that you drank, and you said it was July 4th, and that was what, 2020?
2020.
Okay. Do you know, can you recall what you were thinking at that point?
Absolutely. So I had a very, very small get together at my house that just included my immediate family and an aunt and an uncle. And I was acting like I was okay being around alcohol. I thought that like I was strong enough, like I'm doing my own recovery, but I can still be around this. And so I had said that it was okay for other family members to bring alcohol to my house. And it was that I wasn't strong enough yet. I wasn't like, I was not ready to be around it in that manner, but I thought that I was. And so I caved to the access to it, being in my house, being into my fridge, and I ended up relapsing. But I was truthful and honest about it right away. And I'm very grateful that not many people do get to come back after a relapse. And I was once again one of the fortunate ones.
Do you feel you're strong enough now?
100%.
So are you okay to bring the alcohol in your home and have people drink around you?
No alcohol is allowed in my home. I can be around other people drinking, but my home is an alcohol-free home.
Okay. Other question, you had mentioned that you like therapy and that you, let me see, I was curious, have you scheduled any therapy other than you were doing weekly?
Mhm.
When did that end?
October?
October, just this last month.
No. I think whenever I was able to ask for like a reduction, so I think last year.
Okay, so about a year.
Yeah.
So in that year, it's been monthly, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, have you scheduled any sessions besides the monthly?
When I was going through that difficult period in the summer, I scheduled more sessions because I needed a lot more support.
Okay. And then maybe I have this wrong, but it sounded like you said that you had mentioned something about the person that had, with your friend, you said I think you said, I deserve help, and he, just like he deserved help. What does help look like to you?
12-step meetings. Like he deserves the knowledge and awareness that it's okay to get help and that anybody can do it. And so I just hope that I'm sure it's part of, because he was also under the influence when this happened. I'm sure it's part of his requirement to do it, but there's doing it because a board tells you or the state tells you, and there's doing it because you want to change your life. And just giving him that like knowledge that there's a better life to have if you commit to this program.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Ms. Bailey?
Thank you for your testimony and your candor, and I have no further questions.
Thank you. All right, any other evidence you'd like to present, Ms. Williams?
That's it.
All right, thank you. So we'll have an opportunity for last remarks. I'm going to start with Ms. Lazark, and then we'll end with you. You'll have the last word, all right? Ms. Lazark?
No closing.
All right. Any last remarks, Ms. Williams?
No, that's it. Just once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I'm not sober because I'm on probation. I'm not sober because I got a DUI. I'm sober because I truly, truly, truly love the life that I live. So thank you so much for giving me your time today.
Thank you. So just a moment to conclude. So I'm going to ask whether the matter is submitted, but let me explain what that means because it's a term of art. So when I ask whether the matter is submitted, Ms. Williams, what I'm asking is, do you feel that you've had a full opportunity to present your case and give your best arguments to the board? Does that explanation make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the question now. Is the matter submitted?
Yes.
Ms. Lazark?
Yes.
Thank you. With the matter being submitted, the record is closed. What that means is we won't be receiving any more evidence at this time. And the board will convene in closed session to discuss your petition, and you'll receive the board's decision some months after today. All right, Ms. Williams?
Okay. Thank you.
With that, we are off the record. And back to Vice Chair.
I think we'll take a 15-minute break so folks can, a little bio break, and then we will resume at, it's going to be 10:33. And, thank you. All right. Thank you all for rejoining us for this next portion. And Judge, I will turn it back over to you.
Before we go to the record, let me just check, is Mr. Gittinger, I hope I'm saying that right, present? So please take a seat. Okay. Right. Oh, I can turn it. Mr. Gittinger, am I saying your name correctly? Okay, okay. Do you have counsel for this hearing?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to double check that. Let me just remove that. Madam Clerk? We are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Alexander Marco Gittinger. The agency case number is 200-2017-001-222, and the OAH case number is 2024-100-504. Today is November 14th, 2024. The time is 10:34 a.m. This is the date and time set for the hearing in this matter, and we are appearing in person and by WebEx. My name is Patrice Huber. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this matter, and I am sitting with a quorum of the board. At this time, I'll take the appearances of the parties, starting with Ms. Lazark.
Deputy.
Mic test. Thank you. Ms. Lazark, go ahead.
Deputy Attorney General Adriana Lazark, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522. And I'm here to assist the board members in fact-finding.
Thank you. And Mr. Gittinger?
Alexander Gittinger, licensed clinical social worker.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Mr. Gittinger, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Gittinger or Gittinger, it's fine.
All right. We have a court reporter. You may have heard me say this already. We have a court reporter with us, and her job is very important and very difficult. And it really is to follow what anyone is saying at any given time so that we have a record of what happens in your hearing today. So to help her do that, let's make sure we're speaking clearly, loudly, and slowly so she can follow along. And only one person at a time should speak. So you may be receiving questions. Just make sure that the question is completely stated before you start replying. Any questions so far?
No.
All right. All right. And just to confirm, you don't have counsel for this proceeding?
I don't.
Okay. And you are aware that you're able to retain one at your own expense. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you've chosen to represent yourself today?
I did.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the hearing will go this way, and again, I apologize for being redundant if you've heard it, but I'm going to ask Ms. Lazark to present first. although you have the burden to prove that you are entitled to what you are seeking today. And the reason for that is so that the board and I can have the context and background for what has happened with your licensure thus far and what has brought us here now to this point where you're seeking early termination of probation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any questions?
No.
All right. So with that, Ms. Lazar, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have provided the court as well as the board with a total of 5 pre-marked exhibits for identification. First in order is the memo to the board written by the probation analyst. Second is the certification of licensure. Third is the board discipline. Fourth is the petition and supporting documents as provided by the petitioner. And fifth is the notice of hearing indicating the date and time of today's hearing. And I ask that all 5 exhibits be admitted.
All right. Mr. Gittinger, do you have you seen these exhibits before today?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any objection to any of them?
No, I don't.
All right. Exhibits 1 through 5 are admitted.
Thank you. Petitioner has been licensed as an associate clinical social worker starting on April 28th, 2020. On October 18th, 2023, petitioner's registration was upgraded to a licensed clinical social worker. The license is active and will expire October 31st, 2025, unless it's renewed. On March 16th, 2005, the petitioner was convicted of violating California Penal Code Section 243.4, sexual battery. This was a felony. The court sentenced the petitioner to 30 days in jail, placed him on 3 years of formal probation, and ordered him to register as a sex offender pursuant to Penal Code Section 290. The circumstances were that from approximately May 2004 through August 2004, when the petitioner was about 42 years old, he engaged in lewd conduct with 2 8-year-old girls. On April 24, 2012, the petitioner's conviction was dismissed pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203.4. However, the court ordered the petitioner to continue registering pursuant to Penal Code Section 290. On approximately 4 years later, on August 23, 2016, the court issued a certification of rehabilitation to the petitioner, ordering him or stating that he no longer is required to register pursuant to Penal Code 290. December 1st, 2016, the petitioner applied for a license with the board. The board subsequently denied that application, which led to the petitioner filing a writ of mandamus on January 7th, 2019. October 8th, 2019, the LA County Superior Court remanded the case back to the board for reconsideration. Effective April 28th, 2020, the board granted the petitioner a license, but placed him on probation for 7 years with various standards and optional terms. Petitioner, his probation was told for approximately 3 months from April 2020 to July 2020 to allow him time to find work. He has been fully compliant with all of the terms of his probation, and his expected end date is now July 16th, 2027. Yes, it does.
I do. Okay, my name is Alexander Gittinger, Alexander Gittinger.
But this is the time to highlight or emphasize anything you'd like to, anything you'd like to draw the board's attention to. This would be the time to do that.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
All right. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me be here, that I can actually have this petition considered. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity. I know this is a very delicate subject due to the nature of the criminal offenses that I have committed back in 2005, where I was convicted for. And since then, a lot has happened. At that point, I was not even thinking about being a therapist or being in the mental health field. To give you a little overview, I come from Germany. I've been an actor in Germany in the 1980s, pretty successful. Thought I would continue my career in Hollywood. That's why I came to Los Angeles, and nobody cared what I did. And that was, in hindsight, now I'm looking at this, and that was a deeply, deeply shaming experience for me. It was really being too left alone with an experience. And the shame led to coping mechanisms that led me into a addiction to porn and sexuality and sex and porn addiction. And it all came to really to a head in actually in 2004 when I inappropriately touched these two little girls. And I'm taking full responsibility for this. I'm taking full accountability for this. And sitting here right now, I can, as a therapist now, I can understand, what led to it. Back then, I was just completely unaware of anything. Rightfully and thankfully, my acts got found out, and I was charged and convicted, and rightfully convicted, and put on the sex offender registry. I had to undergo mandated sex offender treatment for a year, individual and group, and it was shaming as well. And the only thing that it really did for me was seeing that there is something wrong, that my view of things was wrong. And I also realized that I'm struggling with a very powerful addiction. So I went to Sex Addicts Anonymous. This is a 12-step meeting, very much like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just the focus is on sex addiction. And I got a sponsor. I started working the steps because intrinsically I knew something was off here. Something in my mind was just not right. My sponsor read my first step, and in our first step in Sex Addicts Anonymous, we do a sexual history. And that read very entitled. My sponsor was highly alerted by that and says, like, man, you need to go back to therapy. And as a matter of fact, you need to put yourself into inpatient therapy. And I said, oh man, I can't afford inpatient therapy. And he said, you cannot afford to do what you did again. And I listened. I then looked for residential treatment programs for sex offenses and for sex addiction. I found one in Pennsylvania, but at that time I was on probation, couldn't leave Los Angeles County, and my probation officer wouldn't have any of it. Luckily, there is or unfortunately was, a treatment center called Del Amo Hospital in Torrance, in Los Angeles County. And so I went there voluntarily for a 42-day inpatient sex offender, sex addiction treatment. And that was the best investment in my life. This is where everything changed for me. And first of all, the physician or the clinical director of this of Del Amo Hospital, he said something to me that I to this day pass on to my clients. And he said to me, recovery is an affair of the heart. And that really stuck with me. It's not checking boxes. It's not just working the steps. It's not just being up here in your mind. It is your heart that makes the decision to open that toolbox of recovery. And there was one particular group in this treatment center that was really pivotal for me. Del Amo Hospital had two sections, one for sex addiction, sex offenses, and the other one it was the National Trauma Center. And there was once a week, there was a group that came together where clients from the trauma center were coming up with clients from where I was from the sex addiction treatment. And each and every one of the people that came, that were sitting in the group, that were from the trauma center, each and every one of them had been sexually abused as a child. And that's when it dawned on me, and I went, oh my God, what have I done? What is the possible ramifications on those two little girls? Are they going to be in 20 years sitting in the trauma center because of what happened and what I've done? That was a life-changing moment for me. And I wept. It was literally a life-changing experience for me, where I finally where it clicked, and where I finally found this deep-seated victim empathy to see, oh my God, this is the effects that an act like this could have on a person. I continued with 12-step programs. Of course, I got very active in 12 steps. My sobriety date is April 7, 2007. So that's the last date where I sexually acted out, and that was basically, I'm being very blunt, it was masturbating in the shower. So, since then I have been sober from sexual addictive and compulsive behavior. Working the 12-step, immersed myself into the 12-step program, and I had sponsees after working the 12 steps. And I was so, what's the right word? I was so fascinated by what good therapy can do, because at Del Amo, there was none of this shaming. People were actually asking, what happened to you? Where did this all come from? So I really had a chance to do a thorough inventory of my life. I thought, oh, my family was great. I had a really great upbringing. Well, take a closer look. Dude, you didn't have any boundaries in your family. No wonder. So all these things, all the stuff that I've learned, and I passed that on to my sponsees. And one day my wife, who, God bless her, stuck with me through all that, my wife said, you're so good at that. Why don't you make this a career? And at that point, I was working still in the entertainment industry. Acting didn't happen. I worked as an editor and director and producer, wasn't really happy with it. And I took that into consideration, said, wow, wait a second. And I started a drug and addiction counselor program at Loyola Marymount University. I got my certification in 2010, and I was always aiming towards helping people struggling with sex addiction, with sex and porn addiction. I mean, that's my thing. It's not alcohol, it's not drugs, it's sex and porn. And I became certified as a California certified drug and addiction counselor. But I knew that if I really wanted to help people with sexual addiction and treat sexual addiction, I needed to have the right credentials. Now, mind you, I was on the registry, so I did not know if I would ever be able to practice as a licensed clinician. I did it anyway. So I got my bachelor's in psychology in 2012 and my master's in clinical forensic social work in 2015. And the reason I chose forensic social work was because I wanted to work with the offender population. My goal is to help prevent and stop child sexual abuse. And a lot is done for for children, for the victims. But who's looking at the perpetrators? Who's helping the perpetrators really find recovery and change their ways so that they no longer offend? Or somebody like me whose addiction got him into really dark areas of life and really hurtful behavior, how can I help somebody to prevent that from happening in the first place? And this is my mission, actually. This is my purpose in life. I finally found it after almost 50 years of living. And so I pursued this career. I was very open about being on the registry. In my cover letters for applying for jobs, there was a paragraph in there that said, and here's what you need to know about me. And I did that because, number one, I don't want people to find out through a background check. I want to be open about it. They better hear it from me than from a background check, number one. And number two, it weeds out a lot of potential employers that would say, no, this is a problem for us. Well, let's not waste each other's time or bring our hopes up. So I was very open about it. And in 2012, I actually got a job as a DUI counselor in a DUI facility in Santa Monica. And then later in 2015, after I became an MSW, I got a position at the People Concern in Los Angeles, which is one of the biggest nonprofit agencies that serves the homeless population in Los Angeles. And I became literally a social worker on the streets, helping people that are experiencing homelessness. I was a program manager in Malibu and in the Palisades, led this program, and it was a highly successful and highly satisfying work to do and to help people in dire straits and in need. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted to be a sex addiction and sex offender treatment provider. That was always on the back of my mind. Now, I knew very well, being on the registry, the Board of Behavioral Sciences would not grant a license. So I didn't even, after graduation, I didn't even bother to ask because I knew it wouldn't be possible. In the meantime, I got a certification as a certified sex addiction therapist with the International Institute of Trauma and Addiction Treatment Providers, and other certifications in Gestalt therapy, in relational Gestalt, and in choice theory. So, in Gestalt therapy, relational Gestalt therapy, and choice theory. So those are certifications that I got besides the formal education, all with the goal of helping people recover from their addiction and desist from sexual offending behavior. And I was really fortunate that the board actually granted a probationary license, so I could actually get clinical hours and work in a clinical environment. And that was at Center for Healthy Sex, which is one of the, well, I would say it's one of the best sex addiction treatment practices in the country. It's led by Dr. Alex Katehakis, and I was under, and still am, under individual supervision with her, and I continue to do that because this is just a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I got I'm leading a group at another facility. This is a drug and addiction counseling facility. It's called Recover Integrity. And I'm leading a group that deals with healthy sex, sexual relationships, romantic relationships in recovery. Because a lot of treatment centers that are dealing with with substance abuse turn a blind eye to what happens when people get sober from drugs and alcohol, and I've seen it. I worked in other treatment facilities where I've seen that people get sober from drugs and alcohol, and next thing you know, porn goes through the roof, or they're going to 12-step meetings, 13-stepping people because it's all about that. And that's not being looked at. And so I've been doing this group now for a while, and really have changed people's view on what sobriety actually is. Because let's face it, if you watch porn, if you engage in sexual behavior, you get the same dopamine. Your brain doesn't care where the dopamine comes from. So, I also became very aware of, very engaged in a civil rights movement, in a civil rights organization, let me correct that, in a civil rights organization called the Alliance for Constitutional Sex Offense Laws. And I went to their meeting. This is a group that's led by an attorney, Janice Bellucci, who actually was my attorney throughout all this. And we're fighting for constitutionality of sex offense laws because a lot of things are not really helpful. But that's a side point. The reason I became active there is because I saw when I went to those big meetings that they had, full of registrants and their loved ones, I heard the voices of shame, and I heard the voices of powerlessness and of hopelessness. And I thought, we need to do something about that. And that's when I started in 2015 an emotional support group for people under registry and their loved ones. It's not a therapy group, but it is very therapeutic. I lead it like a 12-step meeting. And it has changed people's lives. People that were on the registry, hopeless, close to suicide, finally found hope. And what I'm realizing is that, and what I realized and what I really see is that in this environment, in this room, in our emotional support group, people's shame is met with shame. And if you meet shame with shame, it's healing. And this is what was so powerful. And this is also what I see in the 12-step rooms that I still go to, is exactly that same environment, that shared shame, that it reduces and heals shame. And this is what I work with my clients as well. So I don't shy away from my own countertransference of shame. And so yeah, I've been very active in that, and seeing what's going on and hearing what people are going through with the current containment model, which is the current ongoing therapy and treatments and monitoring system for people on the registry. I hear horror stories and heard horror stories. So I developed a different and alternative model, which is called the trauma-informed reintegration treatment model, which doesn't ask what's wrong with you. It asks first, what happened? And looks at the trauma of the offender first. We go into all the other things that are in the containment model. We go into victim empathy. We go into taking responsibility. We go into all these things that are in the containment model, but we start with what happened. And I presented this treatment model now on several conferences, and it was met with really great accolades and saying, like, oh, wow, this is really great. This could be the future of sex offender treatment. And I approached CASOM, which is the California Sex Offender Management Board, with it. And they said, oh, yeah, this sounds really good. Is there any research on it? Well, there's not. And one of the problems is because I am not a mandated treatment provider. CASOM, although I went through all the training with CASOM, they denied me the certification to become a mandated treatment provider. And one reason was because I was once one of them. And the second reason was because my license is on probation. So, and this brings me to really this this push towards or this need to say to have this probation relieved or removed, so I can approach KSAM again to actually become a mandated treatment provider and start running groups that are going along as my treatment model is going. I'm starting a PhD program starting January 6th next year in forensic psychology. And this group, this treatment model will be the topic of my dissertation, so that we actually have research and evidence-based research on this new treatment model, and hopefully I can make a change in the system and help in the long run. I mean, look, this is what really is the driving force for me to stop and prevent child sexual abuse. Just coming from the other side, coming from the offender side, and that's what I'm all about. And so that's pretty much all I have right now. I don't know what else I can say. It's the compliance with the board's recommendations, of course, and as far as therapy, for example, is going. I will continue with therapy. I will continue with supervision because I still stay at CHS despite having a private practice. I will continue working with CHS because we are a team of clinicians. We meet twice a week, one for case consultations, once for clinical conversations. There is a lot of supervision there, and I continue to get supervised by Dr. Katehakis, which is immensely valuable. So I will not practice in a vacuum, which I think is really bad. I've seen therapists practicing in a vacuum and it's really lonely. So I never want to be there. I always want to be involved in a sort of an organization, or even maybe start my own organization. And yes, if I am no longer required or if I'm no longer on probation, I can also look into the possibility of becoming a supervisor and helping other therapists and actually train other therapists in my model and in how to deal with somebody who struggles with sex addiction and has offended. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Yes, Judge.
About that. Sorry for the interrupt. One more time.
Oh.
This microphone is.
Oh.
Microphone, because it was coming through a lot of that signal.
Okay,
Sorry about it.
thank you. Ms. Lazar, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Gittinger, I will talk a little bit about the circumstances that led to your conviction.
Yeah.
But also I want to focus a lot on your rehabilitation post the conviction, because that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
In your inpatient treatment at Del Amo, DELAMO,
Yeah.
two words.
Del Amo, yeah.
That was a 42-day inpatient treatment, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and when you started at Del Amo, you met with is it a Dr. Seeley?
It was Dr. Seeley, who is the who was at that time the head of the sex addiction and sex offender treatment program at Del Amo.
And that's SEALEY.
Why? Yes.
Seeley, for the court reporter.
Yeah. Okay.
And you had an intake interview with Dr. Seeley when
Yes.
you first started. And in that intake interview, you admitted several things about your about how you sexually acted out. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And one of the things that you stated in that interview was that you, with respect to these two 8-year-old girls, that you purposefully struck a relationship with them, right?
Yes.
And that you groomed them. Okay. And you also admitted that at the time that your preferred age group was 5 to 12, correct?
That's correct.
Um, and you also admitted that when you were sexually intimate with your wife, that you wouldn't be able to reach climax without thinking of underage girls. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's how far the addiction went.
Okay. And so that occurred when you were 42 years old or about. But you also admitted to having a prior sexual interaction when you were 14, also with an 8-year-old girl. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, what you mentioned that you didn't have boundaries in your family, and a lot of people don't have boundaries in their family, and they don't sexually act out in this way. But what specifically caused you at 14 to engage in sexual conduct with an 8-year-old?
Looking back at it, it was at 14, hormones raging, prefrontal cortex not online yet, and being ostracized in school, being the school outsider. Everybody got the girl except me. And so there was a deep-seated shame and a deep-seated, feeling of not being good enough. And there was sexual curiosity, and combine that, well, what could possibly go wrong? So, and lack of boundaries as well. I now look at this and I can see, oh yeah, of course, as a 14-year-old, I was not aware of that. But now, of course, I am, and I see, yeah, and okay, this is how this came about. Again, and it's like literally it goes down to toxic shame.
But why, an 8-year-old arguably hasn't reached puberty yet. So why at 14, if you're trying to, engage in sexual contact with a girl, why not someone your age? Why someone who is not hasn't reached puberty?
Because the women or girls at my age didn't have any interest in me, and I was too shy to approach anyone. And there was literally less resistance, there was kind of like, oh, I can push boundaries. And this is what's really important for me. What I learned is like boundaries doesn't mean that I only have my own boundaries, but if there is somebody who has boundaries but cannot express these boundaries, doesn't give me the right to cross them. But of course, I wasn't aware back then.
Now, from the time you were 14 until 42, when you sexually acted out again, did you have any urges? And if so, how did you deal with them?
I did not. Because once I had a girlfriend, age appropriate, and I had several relationships throughout my 20s, 30s, and until I met my wife in my 40s, nothing. It wasn't even on the horizon at all. This is what struck me so hard. It's like, what is like, in hindsight, I'm looking at this, I'm going like, how come that this comes out again? Because it wasn't present at all. There was no urge to engage in this type with this age group. Not at all. So it really took me by surprise.
Do you know what flipped that switch?
I think it was the progressive nature of the addiction, where things became so blurred that I didn't know right from wrong anymore. In colloquial saying, like, I had my head so far up my ass, I didn't see what actually was right or wrong. And it was really, it accumulated, and all that driven by this intrinsic shame. You're a failure. You didn't make it in Hollywood. You didn't make it in Hollywood as an actor. You're flawed. And to cope with that shame and to cope with all that, I went there and yeah.
So for the purpose of rehabilitation, you had that period between 14 to 42 or about 42 where you didn't have these urges to sexually act out. And then something triggered you or, how do we know now? So now we're out about almost 20 years.
Right.
From the last time you said you actually acted out, which was April 7th, 2007. How do we know that switch is not going to flip on again in a year or 2 or 10?
I would contribute that to my recovery and to the work that I'm doing. Because the work that I'm doing right now constantly reminds me of what I have done. It constantly creates some countertransference in me as far as, oh my God, yeah, me too. I understand where this is coming from. And having learned a lot about this in conjunction with a very strong spiritual 12-step program that I'm running, I don't see this ever happening again.
So let's talk a little bit about your rehabilitation, because there are things that you have done that you haven't mentioned. You have attended, is it Sex Anonymous? What is it?
Sex Addicts Anonymous,
So you've SAA.
SAA. In short.
You've attended hundreds of these meetings, is that correct?
I think it goes into the thousands.
And you've sponsored people?
Yes,
right?
I do.
How many people have you sponsored?
Total maybe 25.
And is there like a 12-step program for SAA?
Yes, there is.
How
It's
many-
very much the same as, sorry,
No. Go ahead, please.
I'm so excited about that 12-step program. Because, it's pretty much the same as AA. The only difference is in the first step. We admitted that we were powerless over our sexual behavior, and our lives have become unmanageable. And from then on, steps are the same. So I actually work the steps with my sponsees. I work the Blue Book. I work them through AA, and we just replace alcohol with sex or with porn, whatever they're struggling with.
And how many times have you gone through the 12 steps?
I've gone through the 12 steps 3 times now. The first time with my sponsor, the second time with a non-denominational sponsor, actually in a 13-month workshop, which gave me a complete different view on 12 steps as well. And then again on my own with my second sponsor.
Is your involvement with SAA ongoing?
Yes, ongoing.
When's the last time you attended?
Last week.
Is it a weekly attendance or how often do you go?
For me, it is sporadic. I usually get asked to lead meetings and do a long share. It's usually either my sponsees or they talk in the community, in the fellowship about me, and then the respective secretary of a meeting contacts me and asks me, "Hey, can you lead a meeting?" So I'm constantly being of service in this fellowship.
Now, you've also been to approximately 200 sessions with a Dr. Chris Donahue, Donoghue.
Yeah.
From 2008 to 2011. Is that right?
Yes.
You no longer see Dr. Donahue?
No, I don't see Dr. Donahue anymore. He moved away. I am now seeing Armin Bayer. Armin Bayer. Got it? Okay. Baier.
And you've been seeing, did you start seeing, it's not Dr. Bayer, right? He's a therapist?
He's a therapist, yeah. He's an LCSW.
And you started seeing him, was that in 2014?
I think it started in 2014, yeah.
And you've been seeing him consistently since then?
Yeah, since then.
Approximately how many sessions would you say you've?
We have weekly sessions.
And has that been the case since 2014?
Mm-hmm.
You've also had multiple meetings with a psychotherapist by the name of Dr. Schallbetter.
Dr. Schallbetter, yeah, he was a fellow in the program.
And that's Schallbetter.
That's correct.
And you no longer see Dr. Schallbetter?
No, I don't.
Last time you saw him was in 2007?
Yeah, that's right.
Who's Dr. Paul Lane?
Dr. Paul Lane is a clinical psychologist who did a psychological evaluation for me. And that was in the context of my wife not being able to get her green card. My wife is a Chinese citizen. And when we got married in 2005, we applied, of course, for her to get the green card. In 2006, the Adam Walsh Act became law, and part of the Adam Walsh Act prohibits people who have been convicted of a specified offense against a minor to be the petitioner for a family member. And unless we can prove that I'm of no risk to the petitioner. And so in this context, for the immigration, I underwent a very thorough psychological evaluation. I just thought I'd bring that in here because I think it plays into the whole picture as well.
And also on that note, I did read through the letters that were provided by Dr. Paul Lane, Dr. John Seeley, Armin Bayer, excuse me, Dr. Chris Donahue, and also a letter that was provided by someone at Del Amo. And these letters, they speak very favorably of you, but they were written in the context of you essentially not being a threat to your wife, and that's what they say, a sexual threat to your wife, for the purpose of her gaining citizenship through this Walsh Act.
The Adam Walsh Act, correct.
But they don't speak specifically to you being a threat to someone who is underage or someone who's prepubescent. And I'm wondering why that's the case.
Well, that was the case because it was the context was the immigration. The focus was on my wife, not on my past offending behavior that was targeting minors.
Do you have any letters from doctors that can specifically speak to you not being a threat to someone who's underage?
I think Armin Bayer said something towards that, because then once my wife thankfully she got her green card, and now the focus is back on me as far as what do you do with that conviction? You know, you seriously violated 2 minors. Yes. So and that's what the focus on our therapy is with Armin Bayer.
Your wife is not here today, right?
No, she's not.
And is she fully aware of everything
Absolutely, yes.
that we've talked about
Oh
today?
yes. Oh yeah.
Including your sexual interactions with her?
Yes. This is why I'm so grateful that she stuck with me, despite all that, despite knowing what I did. I mean, I've seen it so happen in the rooms, and I see it in my private practice, or also at CHS. I see this like the wise run, and I don't blame him. So I'm really super grateful that my wife stuck with me and saw. And she said to me once, I put all my eggs in a basket here, and I make a gamble. And she was very clear a few years ago. She said, if I didn't see this fundamental change in you, I would leave. So she saw that change.
When you spoke previously, you mentioned that you've developed a lot of empathy for your victims.
Yes.
What does that look like? That empathy. What do you mean by that? Can you describe it?
Well, looking at it from the perspective of a child, of having unwanted sexual advances, and also the shame that it will cause the child. No, it's kind of basically when I'm crossing someone's boundaries like that, I basically tell them, you don't matter. Well, how shaming is that? And how can that be a cause and a core for a toxic shame later in life? So, and I am reminding myself, God has not put these children in this world for my instant sexual gratification. Not at all. And because they don't have these boundaries, doesn't give me the right to cross these boundaries. And I'm just looking at and thinking, I mean, luckily I have not been sexually abused as a child. But when I'm thinking about that, so I'm just putting myself into the shoes of a child.
Do you have any triggers or do you have any of these feelings that resurface that you mute? No.
They haven't come up in years.
Now, as a therapist, you can treat children, is that right?
Yeah, but I don't want to.
And you don't have any current patients that are underage?
No,
And you don't plan on having any?
no, I don't.
I don't have anything further.
Thank you. Let me just check with the board. I'm going to start to my right this time. Ms. Bailey?
Couple of questions. You said that you attended an SA meeting last week. Prior to last week, when was the last time you attended a meeting?
Oh God, that must have been when I got back from Germany. That was the Saturday meeting 2 weeks ago.
And then prior to that, so are you going regularly or, you talked about,
Intermittently, not regularly, intermittently. I go to SAA meetings.
can you unpack that for me a little bit when you say intermittently? Is that every 6 months, once a
Every
month?
about at least once a month.
You talked a lot about your professional experience in terms of like volunteerism or community service. Do you do any kind of volunteerism that exposes you to underage
No,
children?
no.
I'm trying to think how to form this in a question. You've talked a lot about shame,
Yeah.
but a little less around accountability. And so I wondered if you could talk about when you're supporting others and, your therapeutic mind, because you're talking about, having a focus of what happened to you possibly in your childhood. And I don't see that as revolutionary because I think that's where we are now. We're really looking at people's childhood trauma.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about accountability
Oh yeah.
around that? Because I found that you're talking about others, you're talking about shame, but not really talking about accountability around that. So if you could speak to accountability, please.
Okay. Yes. And I'm so well. Of course, accountability is absolutely there. For my own accountability, I start with shame, and then of course we go into accountability, and heavily so. But I found from personal experience and also from experience in the emotional support group that when people are being constantly shamed more and more, they have a hard time letting down their guards and actually let accountability sink in. Accountability then becomes a lip service in a way. Oh yeah, I'm accountable for it because I want to get my head out of my noose. And I think when we start with shame and then go to accountability, the mind is more open to deal with that because we don't have to defend anymore that much. So, and absolutely accountability is important, and I take full accountability. I mean, the reason I'm doing all this is a part of me making living amends and being accountable for my actions.
One further question. There's a difference between sexual addiction and having a predilection towards minors.
Yes.
So can you address a little bit the difference or talking about having a sexual addiction, or a predilection towards children or minors? That's, can you help me understand when you keep saying that? But I think it's, a little different when your attraction is to minors.
Yes, yes, and that's a really delicate topic here. But yeah, attraction to minors, and there are people that are minor attracted and are, by the way, not offending. But minor attraction can be it can be an acquired arousal pattern where people are discovering that as an arousal pattern. And in that case, one really needs to look at prevention and look at what can you do to, and what do you have to do in order to not become an offender. And an addiction could lead to a shift in an arousal pattern. I've seen that with people that started with pornography, regular pornography, and then ended up in illegal images. And it was not because they're pedophilic, it was because the excitement. And I think that's the very difference, that there is this excitement that keeps going, but it shifts the arousal pattern a little bit, which can be shifted back with recovery, with therapy and with tools and mindfulness and awareness.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Uribe?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. All right. So it looks like currently you're in therapy 1 time a week, and that's been for many years, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What has resonated with you as far as therapy? I know you talked about shame. Anything else that has majorly stood out to you?
Well, the shame is something that we're working on right now quite a bit, and from a Gestalt perspective, and also the how to deal with life. I mean, we've in my therapy we have moved on from the sexual addiction. We're looking into. I mean, it is still part of it, but the main focus now is to deal with countertransference, with transference, with how I in this world am operating as an accountable human being, as the best human being I can be, aside from an addiction, aside from my past. So there's a lot of insights. I mean, I'm talking about shame right now because this is something that I'm really delving into more and more in the last half year, and really experiencing a lot of it. And so my therapist is holding that with me. It's a very slow process, but we're beyond the point of accountability or like what one would do in early recovery treatment. It's more what is happening right now, how you're dealing with it, what are you aware of? It's also the awareness in the moment.
Thank you. So as far as you said, you've gone through the 12 steps about 3 times, correct? So what step do you like stands out for you and why?
Fundamentally, the first 3 steps 1, 2, and 3. Oftentimes, step 1 has 2, not oftentimes, it's overlooked oftentimes. Step 1 has 2 parts. It is like we were powerless over ... and I come to people, places, and circumstances, and our lives have become unmanageable, and that part is often overlooked. So looking at that and saying like, why is my life unmanageable? It's not only unmanageable, or it has become more unmanageable because of an addiction or engaging in an addiction, but was my life unmanageable beforehand and that caused the addiction, or that led to the addiction as a coping mechanism because life was unmanageable, which leads to step 2, and then to step 3, come to believe that a power greater than ourselves will restore us to sanity. And then step 3, give my will over to the care of a higher power. And that, I think, goes then straight to the second half of step 1, which is the unmanageability. Is what I think should happen, is this really the best thing since sliced bread or not? And I leave it over and I give it over to my higher power to see, okay, thy will be done, not mine. And this is how I live my life now. So I'm seeing this opportunity here. I leave it up to my higher power. I do the best that I can, but I let go of the outcome. And either way, I trust that I will be okay because I have this higher power that I can trust that the universe is not doing these things to spite me. There may be a lesson learned. And so that is step 3. And then, of course, step 4, the moral inventory and sharing that moral inventory with my sponsor, with others. And that's another step that really stands out for me because that is where the accountability comes in. It's like, okay, what's my part? What's my side of the street? Where have I gone wrong? So those are that. And then, of course, for me, the 12th step, passing it on to others.
Okay. Okay, so, okay, another question is, how would you deal with, you mentioned that you haven't been triggered in a while. So how would you deal with that being triggered?
I would use the 3-step rule. Look away, make this sexual object, for lack of better words right now, make this a person. This is somebody's daughter. This is somebody's son. This is somebody who has a life ahead of them. This is a person. And God has not put this person in this life and in my eyesight for my sexual gratification. And then I send them away with a prayer. That's what I did in early recovery when there were still triggers there. It hasn't happened lately, but I'm keenly aware of that. And my work with my clients, where I share this exact 3-step rule with them, keeps it in my mind and keeps it keeps it at the ready. Should it occur? It hasn't, but should that occur, it's right there. That tool is right there. And of course, then sharing that, I would definitely share that with my sponsor. I would bring it into therapy and saying, oh my God, what's going on here? What else is going on in my life that I'm all of a sudden triggered here? Where is my life unmanageable?
I'm going to ask this last question. Sorry, I know you mentioned something about hopeless, helpless, and so I'm curious, what gives you purpose right now?
What gives me purpose? Well, what gives me purpose is to see that I can make a difference, that I'm not as helpless or as powerless over what's going on in our system and in the treatment system, that I actually can do something. This is very empowering. And so the question is, how do I go about it? I'm not a lawyer. I leave that up to the lawyers at the ACOL. But I can deal with that and I can make changes in the therapeutic field. And that gives me immense hope and is what gets me up every morning.
Okay, thank you.
Walker?
Thank you, Judge Huber. Oh, thank you, Mr. Gittinger, for your testimony today. I sincerely appreciate it. So I just have a couple of questions, but you're going to have to bear with me, okay? Because honestly, you spent a considerable amount of time providing us insight into your past.
Yeah.
And given those insights on how it got us to this moment, to where you are in your situation. So I need to gain a greater understanding and clarity of your train of thought here. In other words, what you testified today. Okay, so let's go back to the moment that you had at Del Amo Hospital. Am I
Yes.
saying that? I believe that you shared that during that time is when you had a sense of enlightenment.
Yes.
Am I correct? And do you mind just, I know what it is, but I want to hear from you again, that sense, what was it in that moment, in that experience that gave you that sense of enlightenment, in my words?
It was a physically felt experience. It was literally, as I said, it was this, oh my God, what have I done? Because previously there was no empathy, there was no anything. And I saw 40-year-old women, men in their 30s, and realizing that they all have been molested as children, and that's why they ended up in, because they shared their stories. And I don't know how to better describe it, but it was literally an oh my God moment that was so profound. And I said I started weeping, and said, it's like, you can't do this. This is not this is so hurtful. I mean, aside from it being wrong from a legal standpoint, it's just like, it's so hurtful. You're messing up someone's life. Who gives you that right? So yeah, I mean, it was a profound moment. It was a profound shift where I really understood victim empathy, not on an intellectual, but on a really physically felt level.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. My nodding is not that I'm in agreement with you, but I'm nodding because I hear you.
Mhm.
And I appreciate you sharing that again. So thank you for clarifying that. That is my understanding. So those, the people that you were encountering in that moment became your voice of reason.
Yes.
In other words, that helped you get to your sobriety in April of 2007. It was right around the same time. And that sobriety is from sexually acting out on the behaviors and thoughts that got you into this situation. And so I'm looking at whether you are a threat to consumers, to minors, to the patients that, or people that you could possibly provide services to. That's where my line of questioning is going. I want to be positively sure that you're not a threat to consumers.
I am, absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
100%.
that's just where I am.
Yeah.
So when we talk about your recovery and your resolve, which is, and you're quoting you, this enlightenment became your purpose in life. Okay, so talk to me more about this resolve and how that in this moment affects your recovery and your probation status and all the steps that you've gone through. So how has it helped, benefited your recovery? Understanding this enlightenment, this resolve, you're understanding your behaviors and things like that. Is my question clear?
Not really. I mean, how has that helped? I mean, it is ever present.
Recovery and threat.
Yeah.
For me to know that you're not a threat, I need to know that the rehabilitation, the probation, all that
Right.
you've gone through, the steps,
Yeah.
has been beneficial to your recovery. So can you, right?
Yeah, it has been beneficial, but I went beyond that.
Yeah.
So that is, I would be in therapy without, if it wasn't for probation, I would still be in therapy. I would still do supervision. I would still work the 12 steps. This is not because of a probationary requirement. This is because I understand that the addiction is always there. We're not being cured from it. So I have to continue and gladly continue a spiritual program and being of service and doing the work that I do. And the purpose that I'm having with it, it gives me the purpose. It gives me the reason to get up in the morning and do what I'm doing and providing and bettering myself as I am helping other people get better.
Okay, you've answered my question, so you did hear me. And so, because I was just trying to get to there are no guarantees in life,
No, they're not.
So I know that you're doing your best. So just listening to your testimony, so I'm listening for other quote unquote guarantees, if you will, so that I'm assured that you're no longer a threat to the consumers that you may possibly serve.
I
and things
so
like that.
understand that. I mean, that's the same question that we had to deal with with the immigration, like, how can you prove that something will or will not happen in the future beyond the benefit of a doubt? Because that's the requirement in the Adam Walsh Act. All I can do is do the best and do the work that I'm doing right now, internally and externally, to make sure that this is not going to be a repeat.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gittner. You have answered my question and you've actually said what you said earlier. So I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you clearly and that you didn't have anything else to add to that. So again, thank you for answering my
thank you.
questions. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. And Judge Huber, I just wanted to check and make sure that we, the confidential information that's in the packet, that it's appropriately sealed. Do we need to take any action for that, or is that already?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We can handle that after the questions. There is a request for a protective order. Thank you. We can discuss. Thank you.
I think my colleagues have asked a lot of the questions that I have as well. But I want to kind of clarify what the end of probation would mean for you, or why you're seeking the end of probation. And you had noted that you would continue therapy, you would maintain having a supervisor over your practice, and then I want to clarify that you still intend to practice only with adults. You would not expand that practice beyond that. So then what is probation? What does getting off probation mean for you, or allow you to do that you can't do now? I know you noted wanting to be a mandated treatment provider or supervisor, or is that the primary reasons? Is there any other meaning attached to your request today?
That's the main thing. I don't think there's much other meaning. I mean, if I'm on probation and the board deems that this is a requirement, then I will comply with that and defer my aspirations to become a supervisor and possibly mandated treatment provider. The other thing that comes to mind as I'm speaking about that, I'm not allowed to provide training that would allow to have therapists get CEUs. So that's another thing, and I think that what I'm doing with my treatment model and other things, this could very easily turn into a course and a CEU course for other therapists, but on probation I can't do that.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman.
Thank you very much for being here. Your case is very complicated. And I'm just curious whether, I know you said you'd continue with therapy and all the other parts of it, but was probation the answer for you at the time it came?
To be honest, it wasn't. Really, it wasn't an answer. It was a requirement that I understand I have to go through in order to become fully licensed. I was doing already what probation is asking me to do. So I was already doing all these things. So there was not anything in addition that I needed to do for probation.
The people that you deal with and that are undergoing the similar therapy that you have undergone, do you find that they think they are, quote, cured?
I hope not. I hope they continue their work once they're done working with me, as I continue my work. So I don't know exactly what you.
Well, do you think that therapy is going to be a lifelong thing for you?
Oh, yeah. And I thoroughly believe that as a therapist, it is important to be in therapy, simply because of all the transference and countertransference issues that may not be able to be addressed in supervision or with consultation. I think it's really important because it is such an intimate relationship that one has with clients. At least I have with my clients, and I cannot not be touched or not have countertransference. And where could I bring this to? Well, my therapist I can bring this to. And I think that's why I believe it's very important to have therapy just for that reason.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Heft?
Hi, thank you. You saw multiple therapists. You also went to Delamo. You worked with immigration officials and worked with the California Sex Offender Registry. All of them have identified that you're no longer a risk. Since 2005, has any formal assessment of your risk potential indicated that you posed an ongoing risk?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Ortega?
Hi, thank you for your testimony. I guess I heard you say that you do not want to work with children, right? However, if you go over, if you're off probation, like what structures do you have in place so that, you know, knowing that that's a high risk situation for you, what structures are in place to keep you accountable to like not working with that population?
I wouldn't, well, first of all, being in constant consultation, being in supervision, is one of the things. So and my resolve that if somebody comes to me and a minor comes and says, "Hey, I want therapy," or a mother says, "I want you to do therapy," I says like, "I'm sorry, I'm not doing therapy with minors."
Okay, because I know you've worked with the homeless population. Homeless, right? Typically are families, right? It's not all adults. So, did you have any situations where you had to say that?
Well, I didn't work clinically with them. I didn't work clinically with the homeless population. I was there as a case manager and as a drug and addiction counselor. And yes, there were families. And yes, we were always in a team. So that, and I'm there to help these people get off the street. So in any thought on doing anything with, and I think there were only 2 cases that we had, but even then, I mean, it never crossed my mind.
And
Didn't
you're
even-
saying that you worked in a team.
Yeah.
So you,
Yeah.
okay, because I'm just wanting to know, like, what are the protective, right, structures you have in place? Because we live in a world where there are children. So
Yeah.
they're around.
Yeah.
Even if we're like in a group practice, there could be other therapists seeing kids in the waiting room. So just
Yeah.
trying to, see where, if you've had those situations and what did you do?
Yeah, no, I don't have these situations. At CHS, we only treat people that are over 18. We don't treat minors deliberately in our practice. And so that setting is already there. The other setting, Recover Integrity, that's also only for male adults. So I'm not getting in any contact with children, and I don't plan on being part of a practice that that sees minors or that sees children. Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Boyd?
Hi there. I do still have a few questions, maybe, but to follow up to Board Member Ortega and some others, I know I've heard you say many times that you don't plan to work with children and that's not part of your clinical practice, but there's this lingering question in my mind. What would happen if you did? I mean, you don't always get to choose who walks through your door. Certainly you can control to a certain degree who you take on as a client, but I can't help but wonder what would happen if there was a minor that you were working with.
That's so hypothetical.
Maybe.
In a way, it really is. I mean, what would that look like? Would that be somebody, maybe a client of mine, brings their child with them into therapy? Would
Maybe it's
that
helpful
be?
to ask it a different way. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I've heard you talk a lot about how therapy and treatment has helped you, and certainly want to acknowledge that, the certificate of rehabilitation is immensely difficult to get. So there's clear benchmarks and clear things that you've done to demonstrate rehabilitation. I don't know that I've heard really how you've been able to manage your relapse prevention plan, to manage those interests and desires. Those don't go away. You may be able to manage them, but those interests are still there. And so my curiosity lends itself to, how do you manage those in a clinical sense? Certainly you can limit your interaction to a degree, but there's always going to be contact and some variation. So I'm trying to reconcile, I think, that part of my question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I get where you're coming from, or where you're getting at. And it is my personal awareness. It is my awareness and my honesty with self. And again, also my relationship to my recovery and to my higher power that keeps me in check. So that's one thing. That is on a very personal level, where I check myself. It's like, oh, wait a second, is there something? So it's that mindfulness. And then the other part is, should it be, and it hasn't happened, but should there be anything, as I said to Dr. Walker before, it's like, yeah, there is that three-step process that is constantly with me. So I have the tools. I'm also reminding myself that recovery is an affair of the heart. So it is really my heart, and it's so hard to describe, how can I, because it really, for me, it is the heart. It's not the mind that makes the decision, oh no, you cannot do this. It's the heart that says that. And that is maybe to your question, Dr. Walker, that is what was at the core. That was the change of the heart, that moment. And so that's why, what if I would come across a minor? I come across minors, of course, in day-to-day life. Nothing. And I understand, I also want to say, it's like, I understand your concern about, the arousal pattern doesn't go away. It's just, do you entertain this or not?
Correct.
And I don't.
Correct. And that's
And over years, I have stopped entertaining that. And so.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And you got really to the essence of that, which is, how do you entertain that or not entertain it? And or when those thoughts, feelings, urges do come up, how you may or may not.
Exactly. They come. I mean, we're powerless over people, places, and things, and our thoughts. Now but I'm powerless over a thought coming in.
Correct.
But I'm no longer powerless over what I'm going to do with this thought.
Absolutely.
Do I let it in, sit on the couch, destroy the credenza, and the whole house is smashed? Or do I say, thank you, not now? Or even better, thank you, just let me make a phone call here. And hey, my sponsor, I have this thought standing here.
So it sounds like you're able to lean on
Yes.
your support.
Oh, absolutely.
Through your.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you submitted a ton of evidence, many of which were those psych evaluations that the DA mentioned and some others pointed out. I'm curious, so as a Caisson certified provider, I do administer a number of those assessments in the past. And I'm curious, certainly the court probably had information to, like, your static 99s and your stable acutes, a variety of instruments that were measured over your time as a provider, I would assume. But correct me if I'm wrong, that would have been really helpful maybe in being able for us to see how they came to the conclusion in saying that, yeah, this person's met this really high bar of being rehabilitated. Because again, I don't want to take anything away from that. That is very, very difficult to do. And I also wonder why that wasn't included here.
Because it didn't exist. Nobody ever did a static 99 on me, or a Serazzo or anything.
There were no measures back then.
There were no measures done back then, because when I was convicted, the containment model wasn't there yet.
How do you think the court and the probationary program came to the determination that you were rehabilitated?
Probably because of what I have done and how I have progressed and how I have completely changed my life. And yeah, I think that was the determining factor.
Great, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any other evidence, Mr. Giddens?
I had one last question if possible.
Go ahead, Mr. Rubin.
I want to know, Mr. Gettinger, if, do you have to register as a sex offender any longer?
Oh, no.
No, how long has that been?
No, I don't. Since 2000, the certificate of rehabilitation has relieved me of the duty to register as a sex offender in the state of California.
And what year did that occur?
2016.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other evidence?
No.
Okay, all right. And Ms. Lazar, you filed a request for a protective order, is that right?
That's
You
correct.
Okay, and was that for a particular exhibit?
It was for the petition and the supporting documents.
I'm sorry, for which one?
The petition and supporting documents would be Exhibit 4.
Okay.
I don't remember the Bates stamp pages.
Any objection to a protective order over your petition and supporting documents?
Can you explain to me what that is?
Of course. So a protective order will essentially seal that particular exhibit to protect any sensitive information that may be contained in there, such as private information, medical information, patient information, information of minors, things of that nature. So it would protect that and seal it from the public record.
Ah,
Do you have,
okay.
do you understand? Do you have any
And
questions?
now I understand. Yeah.
Any objection?
No.
Okay. Exhibit 4 will be subject to a protective order. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for reminding me. All right. So we'll go ahead and move on to last remarks. I'll start with you, Ms. Lazar. Would you like to give your last remarks?
No closing.
All right. Go ahead with yours if you'd like.
Well, I just want to thank you all for keeping an open mind. And I know this is a very touchy subject or delicate subject, especially when it comes to minors. And I'm sitting here as somebody who has offended against 2 minors. I'm sure that there are some biases, there is some internal countertransference, and I really appreciate you all being open and so actually welcoming. So thank you for having the opportunity to present my case and to be here. Thank you so much, and thanks, Your Honor.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask now whether the matter is submitted, and let me explain what that means before I ask the question. When I'm asking whether the matter is submitted, I'm asking whether you feel that you've had a full opportunity to present the evidence in your favor and to give the arguments to the best that you can. Does that explanation make sense? Okay. Is the matter submitted?
Yes, it is.
Ms. Lazar?
Submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. So with the matter being submitted, the record is closed. What that means is no further evidence will be received at this time, and the board will convene in a closed session to discuss your petition, and that decision on your petition will issue a few months from today.
A few months from today. Okay.
All right, and that concludes the hearing. Thank you so much. We
Thank
are
you.
off the record.
Thank you.
And back to you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Judge Huber, for your leadership today with us. At this time, we're going to be looking to take a lunch break, and then we'll be moving into closed session when we return. We need to give staff a full hour lunch break, and then we can return. So we will be back. It is exactly 12 o'clock now, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock. Back from closed session. The next item on the agenda is discussion and possible approval of the September 19th and 20th, 2024 board meeting minutes. Does any member wish to remove or edit any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Making a motion to approve it?
I think the motion needs to be approved the September 19th and 20th, 2024 board meeting minutes.
Yes, please add that language.
Justin,
Justin Hoff, second.
thank you. Christina, would you take the vote?
Public comment?
Got all out of whack. Okay, do we have any public comment here in the room? Seeing none, moderator, do we have any WebEx participants wishing to comment?
Thank you so much. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator and Madam Chair. I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. Now, Christina, take the vote.
Dr. Nick Boyd,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes. Yes.
Justin Huff,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Wendy Strack.
I'll abstain.
Sorry, what was that, Wendy? Okay,
I'll abstain, sorry.
thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you hold on, Christina? Eleanor, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had, forgot, we can use this. I'm sorry, I just had a conflict on the 21st of August because we start school. So that was the only thing.
That's under the chair report.
Oh, that's, I think, that's something,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
sorry.
No, the
Okay.
board. You said the calendar, right?
We're on number 8, we're approving the consent.
Oh, I got the wrong calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's tomorrow.
Excuse me.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly Ronasinghe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Flores Bailey,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, the executive officer report. Steve?
Well, great. This is what you've been waiting for all day, probably. So let's go through the officers' reports, starting with budget. As you know, we have a budget of or you may not know, $14.3 million for the year. As to date, we spent $3.5 million estimated, and that is for the first, actually, no, third quarter, I think that those figures are from. Currently, we have a 17.9 month reserve in funds. Personnel update. Happy to report, well, at the time of this report, we had 0 vacancies, and that's something that hasn't happened for quite a while. And thank you, Marlon, for keeping on that and to manage that. We do have 1 vacancy that we haven't reported here, but we're going to fill that fast. And by the next time we meet, I'm sure that we will have that filled again. So just to go over that, we've in the enforcement unit, Kane Novi has been hired as an staff service analyst in the criminal conviction unit. And Nikisha Narayan was hired as a consumer complaint investigation analyst. And then we have in the licensing unit, Veronica Rosas. She's a staff service analyst in the LMFT and LEP. She's an LMFT and LEP evaluator. Lisa Amon is a staff service analyst, and she'll be working as an LMFT and LAP evaluator also. Those are kind of like really kind of to highlight those because currently we are experiencing some backlogs and we finally are getting them. We have the bodies in those units now, and they are learning how to process those applications. So that should help out. In the licensing unit also, Whitney McLean was hired as a managed services technician, and she'll be assisting with the LCSW license evaluations. And lastly, Michael Novang was hired as an office technician in the registration unit. And so fully staffed, really excited about it. So hopefully we can keep it that way.
Celebrate.
Yes, it's a very good celebration. So we're going to keep on making sure that next report, hopefully 0 again, 0 vacancies. Population report, we keep growing. 5,514 new licenses and registrations were issued in the last quarter. And that brings our population of licensees, which includes registrants and licensees, up to 147,000, which is a 1% gain over last quarter. And applications we received in the last quarter, we received 10% more applications than were received in the last quarter. And to note, I wanted a special note on the processing time. So hopefully I can explain this, but the processing times we have been looking at that you have seen that we report have been based upon when an application is actually received in our office, when it's date stamped. This has caused some, not necessarily confusion, but the department and other boards look at processing date that the application is received when it is actually opened in the Breeze system, meaning that the application has been received and cashiered and everything's ready to go for somebody to evaluate that. So if you looked at the DCA website and looked at, actually, DCA website reports all of our processing times and kind of application workloads on their front page. You might want to check it out sometime. It's really neat. So what we're reporting here didn't jive really with what they were reporting. And so to kind of standardize that to make sure we're telling the same story, we're going to start reporting our stats based upon the open date in the system, meaning our evaluators can actually start to look at that application. We know that they've paid for the application and the application is ready to go. So we'll be working on that. Or that's how it would be reported from here on out. So there is a difference in reporting. It kind of automatically reduces our processing times because there's about usually a 6-day processing time for cashiering. So really what we're reporting before was probably about 6 days off from the other types of stats. So it just brings us into line and helps us communicate more effectively when we're talking about our workloads with DCA and other agencies within the department. So to that effect too, we are also looking at kind of expanding our reports that we have here. Maybe not necessarily expanding them per se, but to kind of make them easier to produce and keep doing those nice graphs for you. Right now, it's a very manual process. So we have a couple staff members that are kind of committing now to looking at those stats and how we can make it a better process or make it visually nicer for you all to review. And hopefully, we're hoping in February is when our next meeting, there might be a different format. So hopefully that will be to your liking. Considering processing times, we're doing really great in registration. I might have reported last time, and I'm going to report again. We have received more applications this year for the registration unit, and currently we are at around average 28 days for registrant licensing processing. Our goal is 30 days, so we're doing pretty good there. LPCCs, I kind of pull the APCCs, I pull out of that. They're at a 7-day processing time, so those are really going quick. And it's a little bit different. The other registrants, ASW, AMFT, are like I said, average 28 days. Licensing unit, they're working hard at getting those applications done. Currently, right now, is an average of 80 days for the application review. And like I said, we did do some hiring. There's some training going on, so we're hoping to see some changes in that. The volumes, I think we are actually increasing a little bit in volume there because of out-of-state applicants that are coming in. That kind of has an effect on that. I noticed there was, I think it was LCSWs, we had something like it was a pretty big increase from last quarter for the amount of out-of-state applicants that we've gotten received. So we will keep working on processing times. You know, about this time, it's our busy season, so I always like to put out there to everyone that is waiting for their application. I don't know if you're listening. Doesn't look like we have anybody watching, but we're trying the hardest. We understand what the effect those delays are on your, your livelihood, and we're going to keep trying to work at not only just reducing those timeframes, but making sure we can maintain reduced timeframes. And I go administration applications. We had 6% more applications that were received from the last quarter. And those are the address changes, name changes, and such. And a lot of those actually we have moved over to electronic. So that's kind of nice. Examination pass rates, I have to make a note here. I apologize. We do not have the pass rates for the schools within the report. We will get those to you post haste after I get done here. we will put those on the actual website. There was a confusion as to what quarter we were looking at, thinking we didn't have the right quarter, so we'll get those out. So those will be up online after this, and we'll have them at the board if you want a hard copy over here at the meeting room here. So for exams, we administered 5,714 exams, and that's a 2% increase from last quarter. And really for the exams, there's some news to report. And effective January 1st, 2025, the LMFT clinical exam wait time will be reduced from 120 days to 90-day waiting period. So that's kind of a nice, we've been chipping away at that over the last few years. It went from 180 to 120 and now 90 days. So that's really nice. So you don't have to wait that actual, it would only be, you wouldn't have to wait 6 months now, or yeah, it'd be 6 months to actually retake the exam. So that should help out. And to do that, the OPS, we will have to increase our exam development workshops because that requires us to get more questions out there. And the board staff are working diligently to make sure that all those are up, all of that is updated in Breeze so that it's automatic, and working to make sure that Pearson VUE has all the necessary information for the candidate workbooks. We have a couple contracts that were up. Pearson VUE has just been, the Pearson VUE contract has been approved through December 31st, 2027. Also, ASWB, that contract expires in June 30th, 2025, and we will be working to extend that to June 30th, 2030. It's a no-fee contract, so this will just be for services only, so it should be a fairly simple contract to pass through. NBCC, the NBCC, who actually, they develop the LPCC examination, I'll throw all these acronyms, the NCMHCE exam, the National Mental Health Counselors, National Clinical Mental Health Counselors exam. We will be renewing that contract through June 30th, 2030. And enforcement updates, the board received 519 consumer complaints, 284 criminal convictions. Additionally, the 570 cases were closed and 16 were referred to the Office of Attorney General. And the average number of days to complete formal discipline was 369 days. The average number of days a case is at the Attorney General's office is 265, and an average number of days to complete a board investigation is 63 days. We are all within the performance guidelines that are out there. Something that's actually, I don't know if you the chance to the Sunset Report, we have to report on the performance measures, but we always meet those. So enforcement group is doing a great job. During the first quarter, we had 4 early termination petitions for early termination, 1 petition for reinstatement, 1 for reconsideration, and 1 petition that was filed but did not qualify for a petition. So all in all, we had that would come out with 6 petitions that were filed last quarter. Social media, we continue to gain followers on social media, and this is a place where we're looking at maybe how to expand some of the analytics to present to you some more of what goes on with our Facebook and social media posts. And Facebook, we currently have 33,000 followers, and Instagram 15,000 followers. And we are looking towards the future. We've been working with Tony. He was hired as a social media person, kind of took over that job. We're looking at ways that we can kind of expand that. So, and we'll be talking more about how to expand that and coming up with ideas in the Outreach and Education Committee that we will be starting soon. So I look forward to that. Outreach events, we did 10 outreach events last quarter, not last year. Oh my gosh. That'd be dismal. We did 10 outreach events last quarter. And just to kind of highlight what those outreach events are, a lot of them we do consortium where associations have their associations have meetings that we go and present a board update. Additionally, we do presentations to schools, doing how to become licensed, law and ethics kind of presentations, and presentations on what you do when you're under supervision, how you can manage that. So we will continue expanding on that. And the Breeze system updates, we are closer to putting the AMFT registration applications online. And not only that, actually part of putting them online is a whole redo of our Breeze system and the way Breeze works. I think I may have mentioned it last time, kind of explained it, but we have been working on a change to our system for, oh my gosh, it's been about 4 or 5 years. And we're finally at the point where I think it's going to happen in the next few months. So what this is, it really on the front end for the user, it really is not going to be a big difference. But in the back end, it will help us to manage records better, and it will allow us to kind of utilize the Breeze system in a more proficient manner. And you will see on the user end, we will be able to do things on the user interface where when the user uses it, it will actually be simpler. So currently right now, we're at the part where I think in the next, I'm hoping, the next few weeks, in a month, we will actually be testing the system to see if the AMFT registrations works. Once that goes into place, then if we kind of the tester, if it works, then migrating the rest of the registration, the licensees should be pretty, I don't want to say pretty simple. I'm a positive guy. It'll be pretty simple. Let's just say it'll be pretty simple. But it will be easier than the development that we had to go through with the AMFT applications. So I'm excited because I believe definitely by next busy season, which is April, May, we should have things together for, I'm hoping, all registration types. But please don't hold me to it. Communication, we had the Consumer Information Center handled 4,010 calls for us. Average wait time was 1 minute and 14 seconds. And board staff responded to around 32,000 emails during the last quarter. So that's a lot of time on emails. The strategic plan is attached. There weren't many updates to put to the strategic plan since we had a quick turnaround from the last board meeting. So the strategic plan there is there for your review. I would open up for any questions. Or I will let you open it up for any questions.
I just had a quick question on the budget report. You reported a 17.9-month reserve. Does that include the budget borrowing, or does that assume repayment of the borrowing?
That includes the budget. It takes out 10 million out of what we would have.
Still have a healthy reserve even with the borrowing.
Correct. Yes, correct. So we had, because of the budget constraints and budget issues that we're having, we had loaned $10 million to the general fund. And so that 17.9 months in reserve, because they pull from our reserves. So that 17.9 months in reserves reflects a reduction of $10 million. Oh, can you use the mic?
Steve, does the year end in June? When does the?
Correct. Yeah, June 30th.
Okay, so the fact that we've only spent $3 million some odd dollars so far is we're right on schedule.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we in the background, I mean, we review that with, there's a lot of especially with a lot of staffing changes and stuff that we're doing, there's things that we have to, on a daily, I wouldn't say daily basis, but we run drills and we make sure, and we're good we're solid with what's coming down the line, so.
Well, the fact that we lent the state government 10 million, was it?
Yeah.
And what if we needed that? What if we decided, oh, we need to hire such and such a person for
Yeah.
what happens?
Well, that's the thing is, we don't, honestly, it's great to have a healthy reserve like that. It's not really looked upon as something that we want to have, because you want to make sure that you're taking in way too much money, it kind of sounds like. So what we definitely, one of the things we can do and what we are looking at is asking for, that's where you go through the budget change proposal process. We can't be allocated that unless the legislature says, okay, we can spend that. So we go through the process of, we identify areas of need, could be staffing, could be projects, could be whatever. And then we will, do a budget change proposal, submit that, and ask for the spending authority for what we need. So, and I think the projection for me is, definitely looking at increased staffing. There's projects that we've wanted to do that could assist us in, moving forward some of the projects that we've been wanting to do. So we're looking at that. So.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Great.
Okay.
Seeing none. You're off the hook.
There we go. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any questions or comments from our in-person audience? Seeing none. Moderator, do we have any comments online?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on the executive officer's report, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. That takes us to item 2, suggestions for future agenda items. Are there any items coming from board members? Colleagues? Dr. Walker.
Yes, thank you. Can we take a look at the process for reviewing? I'm sorry, we just had this on the agenda today. Reviewing, get the language right. Evaluating the performance of the executive officer. Can we look at that process? I like to, as a future agenda item, looking at the process of how that works. Is that possible? In closed session, wherever it lives, but yeah.
Sabina's coming up.
Yeah, it is a process that is, it's a DCA-wide process that is kind of implemented. So we really can't change that if you want to offer a legal opinion.
I'm not saying I want to change it. I would like to have a better understanding of the process.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
suggesting it as an agenda item so that I understand it.
Oh, yeah, we can.
Maybe we can figure out between now and the next one when HR could come and do a little presentation about it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, yeah.
So does that mean we can add it as
Yeah,
a?
I could,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you, as an agenda
We
item.
have a whole year to kind of figure out where we fit it in there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Susan.
Microphone. I think I know I asked at the last meeting if we could look into something having to do with the problem of insurance for therapists. I do know that there's a national organization that's looking into it also right now. I mean, I looked into it myself a little bit, but that's all I know. And the other thing I think we should, I don't know if we can look into it, but the question of life coaches, because there are more and more life coaches out there, and who knows what they're doing. Oh, one last thing. Did we decide that we cannot check at all on what all of these businesses that arose as a result of the pandemic, like BetterHelp, that we could not check into whether they were using licensed therapists or anything like that? That was not our purview.
The insurance thing, I can talk to you offline about that. Definitely, if you looked at the sunset report, one of the things on the sunset report we do have on there is online therapy, and so that's on there as kind of thing to look at that we might address later on. And then for, life coaching. I think it's probably a topic that will come up. I mean, in the near future, I think we might discuss that. Because I think we will definitely, one of the pastoral counseling is something that we have on one of our committees. And we might tackle the life coaching again. So
Right, Justin.
This is future agenda items. Um, so Title IX policies are federal laws that prohibit discrimination based on sex. And across the state, we have universities that have legal exemptions, which allow them to discriminate against queer students, including expelling them. Universities like William Jessup recently. And certainly this doesn't align with California values or standards of care or the board's values on who should be licensed and the quality of care these individuals should be providing. I'd like to look into changes to accepting education from these universities if they don't fully abide by Title IX policies.
Thank you. I didn't note any other future agenda items. Okay. We will go, any members of the audience in the room want to suggest future agenda items? Seeing none. Moderator, are there any members of our remote audience that would like to suggest future agenda items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to suggest future agenda items, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We will give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment at this time. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. That takes us to item 3, public comment for items not on the agenda. Now open for public comments for items not on the agenda. I said that twice, sorry. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Each commenter will have 2 minutes. Before we open public comment, do any board members have comments for items not on the agenda? Seeing none. Any comments from those in person? Seeing none. Any comments from our remote participants, moderator?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have again opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on items not on the agenda, please either raise your hand or type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Madam Chair, I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. That takes us to adjournment. We will recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow, November 15th. Thank you, everyone, for participating today, and we will see you tomorrow morning.